Sly runs over to her, gallantly trying to save her because he heard screaming. And then he says he'll leave because she doesn't have any pants. She says, "Huh? Since when did a lack of clothes matter? Plus, you're not wearing any pants either. Are there sexist laws around here or something?" I love that one of the first things Sally does to interact with Sly is not to judge him for being a thief, like I'd expect. Instead, it's this, outright pointing out how the two franchises are different in a minor way I never would have noticed. He tells Sally that there's no laws and it's just a norm. He fortunately says that she's free to dress as she likes, but she should expect to turn a few heads. Sally explains with a cute smile that where she's from, clothing is like any other optional accessory, like jewelry or makeup. I wish she had her normal art style like a Sonic character, but she still kinda looks good aesthetically. I just don't see the point of doing this and trying to make her look more human like it's Other M where the characters have necks. There's a reason I thought only Other M would do something like that. It's been a while. Then Sly thinks about how Murray doesn't wear any pants either, despite not being covered in fur. Okay, why is this the first time he's had a problem with this with Murray, and realized this? Him thinking this just makes it make less sense that he had this argument with Sally. Anyways, he says she wins. I'm glad the story skipped past a lot of her explaining her world to Sly. That would just tell us stuff we already know. I'm not sure Sly would have had that interesting a reaction to it anyways, other than thinking, wow, Eggman's awful. She says in shock that even though there's no overlanders here, his planet is still polluted and industrialized. Because she has such faith in Mobians that she thinks it's ridiculous that even they would industrialize their planet. She says that it makes sense that if there's alternate realities, there will be ones that are nothing like Mobius. Then she asks what in the world is Sly wearing. He looks ridiculous. He's at least making me smile though, so this is humorous. He explains that he makes his career out of stealing from criminals. So he has to wear a disguise when in public. I hope he does proper research so that he knows it's a criminal every time. For some reason, Sally says he's just a common thief, even though he just said that he only steals from criminals. But to be fair, he also said other big game. That could easily be interpreted as, and rich people. I'm glad she's casually sipping something while saying that to him, instead of glaring at him, as if he's Fiona. I hope Sly mostly just steals from criminals. It'd be ideal if it was 100% of the time. He says he's not common. Then we see the cop who usually chases him, and she's right across the street from them, by coincidence. He at least justifies that she has a knack for popping up wherever he goes. This would be properly explained if he said that she has a tracking device on him. But then I'd wonder why she didn't find his hideout and arrest him in his sleep. So she's just getting really lucky over and over again. Why does Sally think that she seems friendly? She's a horrible judge of character. Also, I just realized how ridiculous it is that she's a cop when she has no police uniform. Why is she allowed to wear a top that shows the cleavage and has nothing covering her belly? She's not dressed like a cop at all. Do they think she wouldn't be pretty if she did? Also, wouldn't you have to have hair that's a bit shorter than that, so that the hair couldn't be grabbed and pulled? The point is, it sure is lucky for Sly that apparently in his universe, that's just what the female cop uniform looks like. They're allowed to dress in a way that makes it almost impossible to tell they're cops, even when they're trying to arrest someone. Maybe it's just the necklace that's a uniform, but that's pretty small. And she even changes her outfit later. I guess the police uniform changed. I mean, there's a reason police have uniforms. But yeah, it's forced that Sally thinks she's friendly without even hearing her talk yet. I don't remember her being friendly. I remember her being vengeful, completely obsessed with arresting Sly. That's more like an antagonist. Like a hero antagonist, like Dip, where he is trying to do the right thing, but is being a likable jerk in the process. So I'm conflicted on whether I like or hate her. No, I'm pretty sure I hate her. She finds an article, and seems to look crazy because she's talking to herself, while Sally and Sly are sneaking away from her. She says with the newspaper that she has a good idea of where Sly's gonna go next. Sly reminds me of Sonic when he says all inventors need danger, and he says that it allowed him to glance an article about this. A museum with a banner over it saying to come see the famous gemstones of the world. There would be so many gemstones in the world that there would be so many museums with gems in it. It could be in a different museum. But this is the closest one to Sally, so of course it's the most likely place that a Chaos Emerald will be put. It's opening in a week. Sally doesn't want to wait a week just to find out if the emerald is there or not. So she's smart enough to realize that she can't just walk up to these guys and tell them it belongs to her. I love when characters aren't idiots. Sly reassures her that she'll have her emeralds by tomorrow. Why not by today? Why not hurry? He tells her he'll get her geared up for tonight. He doesn't need her help. I guess he just really wants to spend more time with her. He says that normally he likes to get to know a place first, but he's been to this museum tons of times already. Makes sense. He asks Sally considerately if she's sure that she doesn't want to stay back and feed him information where it's safe. I don't like how Sally looks here. This is the biggest problem with the comic. She's gonna look like this for a while. She says a huge chunk of her life was dedicated to breaking into high security areas with robotic guards that would shoot first and ask questions later. I love that she's written to point that out and relate to Sly. And she was never the type to sit back where it was safe and let others do the dirty work for her. Surprisingly, for someone so cautious, there's a limit to how cautious she is. I'm glad she's on good terms with him even though he's a thief. Makes me wonder about her glaring at Fiona so much though, since she was a former thief at the time, and a freedom fighter. She doesn't even point out that the reason she's on good terms with Sly is that he only steals from criminals. Anyways, he's confident as they slowly go down to the floor, and Sly's surprised that they remodeled the room a lot since he was last here. He says that this is why he scopes places out first, and decides that they should split up to cover both hallways. It's gonna be hard to look at Sally like this. If this was someone's first page, they'd never know it was her. She eventually finds the emerald under her cloth, and then light appears around her hand, and a bag shows up around it. Because the cop has that magical power when she shoots at people. That's interesting. It must be a bit more futuristic than our world. It's also creative that the first person she antagonizes is Sally, not Sly. I still can't help but hate her for antagonizing a good guy though. Meanwhile, Sly wastes her time avoiding a guard, who thinks he's just seeing another empty barrel. So why is a barrel in a museum? Does that make sense? Anyways, Sally's told that she'll have plenty of time to explain her sob story back at the station. She's so spiteful to criminals no matter how polite they are. It seems like she just does it for stress relief. And she throws some light grenade at her to get away while apologizing. Sally explains herself properly while thinking she's in pain, but is given no sympathy, and she kicks the gun out of her hand while apologizing. Sally thankfully angsts again, thinking that she's fighting a good guy, which contrasts her from Sly. She wants to knock her out, and she decides to let her hit her and knock her out once she lets her guard down. What makes her think this won't go wrong for her? She thankfully does succeed in her plan and knocks her out with the device. There's a surprising twist because the thing under the sheet isn't the Chaos Emerald, and she gets tackled. I guess she's just pretending to be unconscious. It'd be nice if I was reminded of her name. I have an idea of what it is though. It starts with a C. She realizes from the handcuffs that Sally has to be working for Sly. She realizes the emerald is gone. Why is she calling it that if it's purple? Sally tells Sly to put the jewel back, since it wasn't the one she wanted. Sly, after being upset, suddenly says that it's not his style to rob a normal museum without reason anyways. It isn't? Huh? Why did he even hesitate at the idea of returning it then? The female cop gets some sympathy points finally when she says that it's gonna take her years to pay off that stolen gem. Then she finds it, and there's a note explaining, as I said before, this isn't the emerald I was looking for. Please take it back, and sorry for all the trouble. She thinks that she should have known that Sally and Sly were working together because they both don't wear pants. And then she imagines them talking to each other as she wonders if their relationship goes beyond just being in the same gang. She imagines Sly insulting her behind her back, and then remembers them kissing her against her will. At first I thought she was wishing he would do that. It didn't look like a flashback. It just naturally led on to that from her imagined spot. Why is my time being wasted with her? She's not doing anything. Finally, we see Sally again. Sly apologizes to her, fortunately, and says that's the last time he'll plan a heist around a random floating newspaper in the wind. He's smarter than I expected. Normally, one of his friends conducts research and plans out the missions for him. I don't think he was too stupid there, because it seemed like a reasonable idea at the time. Sally tells him not to worry, and says that she knows that he's trying to help. They're still on good terms, and she thanks him. What was the point of us seeing Bentley if he wasn't going to do anything? What, does he have the Chaos Emerald? Sally has another bad dream that just rips off Archie Sonic again. I didn't even read it this time. Nobody wants to be reminded of that story arc. And the last time we saw a dream like that, it wasn't exactly the same. But I don't even want anything similar to it. The next morning, Sly fortunately says good morning to Sally and reassures her. And Sally finally reveals that in her dreams, she had been seeing things from Sally's perspective, even though she clearly saw her and reacted to her. So, does that mean the entire Sly Cooper universe adventure was just a dream? No, that would have made sense, instead of her only being here because the Chaos Emerald of all things warped her here. Sally thankfully explains that she thinks that when the Emerald zapped her, it took a piece of her and put it in that robot. Now every time she loses consciousness here, that piece of her wakes up over there. Sure is convenient that that's how it works, instead of, like, her having two consciousnesses, which would leave both of them too distracted by the other to do anything. Sly's told that these reports were here when she got here. He says that Bentley made the reports, which say that immense energy readings foreign to their world have been recorded a few miles out of town. And this proves to Sly that Sally's different dimension story is real. Well, duh! Why didn't he believe it was real? That's the whole reason she doesn't wear pants. Although it is easier to believe that she's just got a quirk. But why would she have lied to him about all that? Sly thanks Bentley for the information, and Bentley apologizes from text on a computer screen and says the gang needs a few more days to get prepared for another heist. And he tells Sly to scout out a place listed in the report in the meantime. Sally reassures the disappointed Sly that his gang will be willing to help soon enough. And he calls her the voice of reason and logic, kind of rubbing it in that Sally's in character here, and apologizes. They arrive there in a rental van that has a huge Sly Cooper logo on it. What's the point of Sly's disguise then? You know, maybe nobody would get suspicious of the van on sight if he didn't have that logo on it. They better hope nobody actually sees it. And it's kind of surprising that Sly's a van at all. We see it in the game, but he's a wanted criminal. How did he get a van? I guess he could have rented it in a disguise just fine though. I just imagine him walking around. I'm just saying it's a bit surprising that criminals have a really inconspicuous logo on their van. That seems totally unrealistic. But so are Sly's time-slowing powers from the game. And that's not referenced here, because that would be way too broken. I'm glad it's not referenced here, because it would make Sly look like an idiot for not using it at every opportunity, and easily breaking any kind of tension. Anyways, Sly says Bentley set up a monitor station in the back of the van that Sally can use to help guide him and feed him information while he infiltrates the place. And he also has a camera thing that'll let her see what he sees in the field. Sally agrees and bores me with a bunch of dialogue while nothing's happening. Bentley was able to map out the one-story building, but there are 3 blank areas with security that he couldn't hack into overnight. So the emerald might be there. Sly calls her a natural leader and she thanks him. Sly finds a hall full of drilling equipment for a research facility. He questions the regular guards getting replaced by strange-looking goons when they get to the blind spots. Sally sees people in cages and says this place is starting to give her flashbacks of home. She wishes she could help them, but is rational enough to know that without the full story, they could cause more harm than good. She could mean that releasing the caged people could end up releasing monsters to the world instead, like people brainwashed to become evil sleeper agents. She should say that though, to be less confusing. They find the emerald, and a one-dimensional scientist bad guy cliché is experimenting with a laser powered up with it. This guy makes me appreciate mad scientist characters like Rick, because at least he has an interesting personality that would take multiple scenes to fully establish. This guy just makes science look bad and the writing look unimpressive. The tedious, unlikable bad guy sees Carmelita show up. And jeez, he talks way too much. He's really boring me. He says to let the cop in and sound the alarm. Sally tells Sly that he should get out of there because it's too heavily guarded for him alone. Sly says there's no fun in that and he'll give it a try. But as soon as the alarm goes off, he wisely decides to retreat. He tells her to start the car for a quick getaway.